Uh, Dear students, we will start from where we had stopped last time. We were discussing about the mechanism of opening and closing of stomata in plants. Now, we will continue from there. In the last class, I have told you that the mechanism of opening and closing of stomata is dependent on turgidity of the guard cells. Now, you know that guard cells are the two cells, beam shaped cells that guard the opening of the stomata. Now, and that we have also discussed that we have also discussed this, that the stomata are having the two guard cells which have a thin outer layer and a thick inner layer. The thin outer layer expands and the thick inner layer becomes concave to make the stomata open. Now the opening is responsible, the opening is possible because of radial mycelation, that is, the cellulose fibrils of the stomata are placed like this. This type of placement of the microfibrils or cellulose sutta, cellulose fibrils are in the radial format. Now, these help in opening of the stomata. When does this happen? This happens when the guard cells become turgid. Now, why they become turgid? The guard cells become turgid because of osmotic concentration of the guard cells. Why do osmotic concentration increases? It increases because of photosynthesis in the guard cells, and when osmotic concentration increases because of the sugars that are produced in guard cells where chloroplasts are also present. Now, what happens is the stomata open because water enters into the guard cells from the cells around. These cells which are around the guard cells are called subsidiary cells, and see the process of entry of water into the guard cells is called endosmosis. Now, the stomata open because of more expansion of the outer wall, which is thin, and the curving of the inner wall. Now, I have already told you that this is because of radial mycelation. Now, there are different mechanisms theories which have been given for explaining the increase of osmotic concentration or osmotic pressure or osmotic potential of the guard cells, by which the water from the subsidiary cells enters into the guard cells. Now, it was Lloyd who first said that starch in the guard cells, it is not only a insoluble product, but it gets converted in the guard cells to sugar. Now, that means it is not that the sugars are produced only by photosynthesis. Now, the stored starch is also converted to sugar. Now, Loftfield said that during daytime the sugar content of the guard cells is more and starch content is less. Now, it is Sayre in 1926 who gave the idea that when starch is converted to sugar, the pH remains 7.7 to 7.5 in the guard cells, and during night when sugar is converted to starch, the pH remains 4.2 to 5. This shows that the conversion of starch to sugar and sugar to starch is dependent on pH, and it is believed that during the day the carbon dioxide which is produced in guard cells is utilized in photosynthesis for preparation of food. So, the carbonic acid is less, so pH is more, and in the night there is no photosynthesis, so the carbon dioxide is not utilized. Where from the carbon dioxide comes? Day or night, carbon dioxide is released due to respiration. Now that is used in daytime for photosynthesis, so the pH increases, and at night the pH decreases because the photosynthetic process is not there and the carbon dioxide gets accumulated. So, carbonic acid increases, so pH decreases. Now, this conversion of starch to sugar and sugar to starch is controlled by an enzyme called is interconversion of starch to sugar is possible like this. And one thing was said, that Sayer said starch is not converted to simply sugar but glucose 1-phosphate in the presence of phosphorylase, the enzyme, not phosphorylase. Now, glucose 1-phosphate is not osmotically active as per Stewart. So, Stewart said glucose 1-phosphate is further converted to glucose 6-phosphate. So, what happens? Starch is converted to glucose 1-phosphate at higher pH, glucose 1-phosphate is converted to glucose 6-phosphate. But there are objections to this theory. Not always starch or sugar are present. There are organic acids which increase in concentration during daytime in the guard cells and not sugar in some plants. And monocots, the guard cells are not very prominent, and in some plants stomata close during daytime. This hypothesis says that stomata open during daytime, but it has been found that stomata are closed during daytime. Now, the thesis is like this. Now, starch is converted to glucose 1-phosphate, which we have already said, and I was also mentioning about the enzyme phosphorylase. Now, the phosphorylase enzyme at pH 7 to 7.5 converts starch to glucose 1-phosphate. Glucose 1-phosphate is not osmotically active. So, what happens is glucose 1-phosphate is converted to glucose 6-phosphate. Both are same, only the phosphate attached to glucose changes from position 1 to position 6. Glucose 1-phosphate changes to glucose 6-phosphate, and this is carried out by an enzyme called phosphoglucomutase. Mutation means change. Phosphoglucomutase, because it is glucose and phosphate is attached, it is called phosphoglucomutase. Now, this mutase enzyme converts glucose 1 phosphate to glucose 6 phosphate. Now, once glucose 6 phosphate is formed, then glucose 6 phosphate breaks to form glucose and inorganic phosphate. That means phosphate is removed from glucose to form glucose and inorganic phosphate. The enzyme responsible for this process is phosphatase. Now, then once glucose is formed, an enzyme called hexokinase. Hexo means 6, kinase means, you remember this, whenever there is involvement of ATP to add a phosphate, the enzyme is hexokinase. To add a removal of phosphate involving ATP, the enzyme is kinase. Hexokinase, because 6 carbon is glucose is 6 carbon, kinase is the enzyme which adds the phosphate from ATP or removes phosphate from any compound. Now, this occurs from energy in the presence of oxygen, and hexokinase adds phosphate to glucose to form glucose 1 phosphate, and glucose 1 phosphate is again converted back to starch in the presence of same enzyme phosphorylase at pH 4 to 4.2, that is here 4.2 to 4.5. Now, pH is not mentioned here. So, this is the sequence. I am repeating the sequence here. During the daytime, starch is converted to glucose 1 phosphate at pH 7 to 7.5, and this is carried out by an enzyme phosphorylase. Now, glucose 1 phosphate is then converted to glucose 6 phosphate in the presence of the enzyme phosphoglucomutase. This is a mutation enzyme where the phosphate changes from first position to 6th position. Now, this glucose 6 phosphate loses its phosphate and glucose and phosphate are formed in the presence of phosphatase, and glucose is converted back to glucose 1 phosphate in the presence of hexokinase and ATP. Now, this glucose 1 phosphate converted back to starch at pH 4.2 to 4.5. Now, this is how the stomata open. Now, during daytime, formation of glucose, which is osmotically active, makes the stomata open because the osmotic concentration increases and water enters into the guard cells, the outer wall stretches, inner wall curves, and the stomata opens. And during night, at pH 4 point something, the carbon, because of increase in carbon dioxide, which is not used in photosynthesis, the phosphorylase enzyme converts glucose 1 phosphate to starch again. Now, I have told you that there are some objections to starch sugar hypothesis, because some scientists found that it is not sugar which gets accumulated during daytime in guard cells, but it is organic acid which gets accumulated. Now, this active potassium ion transport theory was given by Imamura and Fujiro in 1959. Now, according to this theory, I will directly explain from the diagram, then we will get back to the thing. Now, what happens is, during daytime, starch is converted to phosphoglyceric acid. Now, this is a process in all plants where sugars are converted to phosphoglyceric acid during respiration. The PGA or phosphoglyceric acid gets converted to phosphoenol pyruvic acid. Phosphoenol pyruvic acid, and phosphoenol pyruvic acid gets converted to malic acid, and so two acids, phosphoenol pyruvic acid and malic acid. After malic acid is formed, malic acid dissociates, separates to form hydrogen ion and malate ion. Now, malate ion is there, but hydrogen ion is formed. The hydrogen ion, what happens is, in the subsidiary cells you have potassium and chlorine. Now, the hydrogen ions move out by exchange with potassium. So, hydrogen goes out and potassium comes in. Now, there is exchange of ions with the expense of energy from ATP. Now, increase in potassium ion concentration results in osmotic concentration of guard cells, and there is end osmosis and guard cells become turgid and stomata opens. I am repeating again. Now, during daytime, the starch is converted to glucose. Glucose is converted to pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid is converted to malic acid. Our concern is malic acid because it has been found that mainly the sugars are converted to malic acid. Now, once malic acid is formed, this dissociates to form hydrogen and malate ions. Now, hydrogen ion gets exchanged with potassium, which is in the subsidiary cells. So, potassium ions enter in and hydrogen ions go out. The accumulation of potassium ions in the guard cells along with malate increases the osmotic concentration of the guard cells. There is entry of water from the subsidiary cells and the stomata opens. Coming to the night, now all this process is responsible for, when hydrogen ions move out, naturally pH increases and there is conversion of starch to sugar. Now, during daytime, there is increase in carbon dioxide concentration of the guard cells because of respiration. pH decreases, it is wrongly written, decreases, and the potassium ion prevents the entry of the entry of potassium ions is prevented by a hormone called abscisic acid. It is an inhibitor hormone, abscisic acid, which prevents entry of potassium ions. So, potassium ions do not enter. So, potassium ions go out and hydrogen ions come in. Now, again the potassium ion decreases and the osmotic concentration decreases and there is removal of water from the guard cells, and that causes in exosmosis. So, the guard cells become flaccid. Remember, flaccid means no water in the guard cells or less water, and Turgid means more water in the guard cells. Now, so we have discussed two theories explaining the entry of opening and closing of stomata. One is starch sugar hypothesis and the other is the potassium ion concentration hypothesis, exchange. Now, what are the factors affecting transpiration? This is not that vital, but you remember, if the shoot root ratio is more, then there is increase in transpiration. Shoot root ratio. So, if shoot is more, root is less, then there is more transpiration. Leaf area more, then transpiration is more. Now, leaf structure, that is, if there are waxy layer on leaf or there are hairs, then that reduce transpiration. Then if the stomata are sunken as it is in some xerophytic plants, Moru Udvida, then there is decrease in transpiration. So, root-shoot ratio, leaf area, leaf structure and somatal structure, all these are plant factors. Besides this, light, humidity of air, light affects photosynthesis, humidity of air decreases transpiration because of humidity, the diffusion of water vapors from the stomata decreases. Wind flows away the water vapors on the leaf, so on the or below the leaf, and so the movement is more in wind. Temperature increases transpiration. Now, availability of soil water. If there is more soil water, then naturally there is more transpiration. Coming to significance of transpiration, this also is asked as a short note. What is the significance of transpiration? Now, you know that evaporation causes cooling. If there is any evaporation from any place, it causes cooling. Now, cooling is caused by transpiration because there is evaporation during transpiration. Now, xerophytes have less transpiration, thus they have other mechanisms for cooling. So, transpiration keeps the plants cool, that is regulation of temperature. Now, as we have already discussed in the previous thing, absorption and translocation of water is more in case of plants where there is more transpiration. So, transpiration is responsible for absorption of water, that is passive absorption of water, and translocation of water or ascent of sap. Now, absorption and translocation of solutes. Now, when solutes enter into the plant through, because of transpiration pull, you find that it causes more movement of minerals up to the shoot. Now, because of the beneficial effects, because what are the beneficial effects? It regulates temperature and keeps the plants cool. It is responsible for absorption and translocation of water. Now, it is also responsible for absorption and translocation of solutes, that means minerals. So, transpiration is called a necessary evil. Now, diurnal variation. Diurnal means variation in transpiration during night and day. Now, stomatal transpiration starts in the morning and gradually increases. We have seen earlier as an objection to starch sugar hypothesis that during the daytime at midday the stomata are closed. Now, you can find here at around noon inside the plant there is deficit of water because absorption is below transpiration. There is more transpiration because of heat, sunlight, and there is less absorption. Now, the stomata get closed, and in the afternoon the internal water gets again recouped, that means increases again. So, due to absorption of more water, then the stomata again open. Now, because of less light in the night, the stomata get closed. These fluctuations in the called daily periodicity or diurnal variations of transpiration. So, I am repeating again, stomatal transpiration increases during daytime, goes to the peak, and during noon the stomata may close. It is because there is more transpiration and less absorption, so the internal water status decreases in the plant, and in the evening the internal water status improves, and this is because of more absorption, because water can be absorbed more and the stomata opens again. And when it is night, the stomata gets closed because there is no light. Now, these changes, time dependent changes, are called diurnal variations. Now, antitranspirants. Antitranspirants are substances which reduce transpiration. Now, silicone oil waxes these reduced transpiration, and there is a chemical phenyl mercuric acetate and the hormone which we have already discussed, abscisic acid and phenyl mercuric acetate, these two also anti-transpirants. So, anti-transparent, you can get a short note. Then scotoactive and thermoactive. Scotoactive is opening of stomata during night, and thermoactive is opening of stomata at high temperature or closure of stomata. At high temperature. Scotoactive mechanism is same, potassium ion, and thermoactive we have already discussed. The temperature increases during daytime and the stomata closes. Now, then comes guttation. Guttation is not transpiration. There are certain plants, you can see this diagram, there are certain plants in which water drops are seen at the edges of the leaves. These are water droplets. Now, this is by a process called guttation. Guttation occurs through a pore called hydathode pore. The guard cells are there, but they are not effective. They are not regulated. The tissue below the pore is called epithem. Now, the vein endings are here. Water through xylem moves to this place and comes out through this during night time. There is no involvement of the transpiration process. Now, this process of coming out of water from the plant through the leaves through pores called hydatodes is called guttation, and this occurs during night. There is no root pressure, no transpiration. Now, the water that comes out because of guttation contains minerals, whereas the water that comes out due to transpiration is pure water. Now, transpiration takes place during daytime and guttation takes place during night. Now, transpiration is water vapor, and as I told you, transpiration is in form of vapor and guttation is in the form of liquid. Now, transpiration is pure water and guttation is water with dissolved salts. Stomata, cuticle and lenticels are involved in transpiration, whereas hydathode is involved in guttation. Guard cells are functional in transpiration. In guttation, they are not functional. The stomatal transpiration is controlled, whereas guttation is not controlled. Root pressure has no effect on cooling, whereas root pressure transpiration causes cooling. Now, another difference that you may get is, one is transpiration and guttation. Now, another difference is evaporation and transpiration. Now, evaporation is a physical process and transpiration is a physiological process. Now, evaporation causes dryness of the surface, whereas transpiration cools the surface. Now, evaporation is not regulated, but transpiration is regulated because of stomatal movement. Mostly occurs through open spaces like ponds, wells, all these places. Now, but transpiration occurs through perimeter diffusion. What is perimeter diffusion? There is stomatal pore. The edges of the stomatal pore is called perimeter. You know poridi. Perimeter. Through the perimeter, the diffusion takes place. Now, the area, suppose there is a vessel. The vessel area from which evaporation occurs is fixed, but as far as transpiration is concerned, the same vessel, imagine, is covered by a membrane. A number of pores are made on the surface. Now, compare this membrane with leaf. Membrane with large number of pores. Now, these pores are stomata. So, each pore increases the surface, and through each pore there is perimeter diffusion. Now, now we come to the next chapter, that is absorption of minerals and salts or absorption of solutes. Now, where are these minerals available or salts available? They are available in the soil. Now, they are in the form of ions. They are not compounds, they are ions. The minerals are absorbed by the roots. So, who absorbs the minerals from the soil? Roots. Why? Because the minerals are available in the roots. Now, there are two mechanisms, passive absorption and the other is active absorption. Passive absorption, we have already discussed that absorption takes place by the roots. Now, absorption by roots is by mass flow. What is this mass flow? We know that water enters into the plant through the root because of transpiration. Now, along with water the ions also enter in, provided the membrane is permeable to the ions. This is mass flow. This is not acceptable because ions are not freely allowed to diffuse into the root. Then diffusion. Now the mineral ions may diffuse into the plant by process of diffusion. Again the same thing, the membrane must allow them to diffuse. Then ion exchange. Now ion exchange is, I will show you through a diagram. Now say this is the root and these are the clay particles or soil particles. Now attached to the soil particle is the potassium ion and attached to the root surface is hydrogen ion. Now by ion exchange, the movement of hydrogen ion or oscillation of hydrogen ion and potassium ion clashes, and the potassium ion comes here and hydrogen ion goes to the clay particle. This is ion exchange process. So we have discussed three. One is mass flow, where the ions enter along with the entry of water. Second is diffusion, simply entry of solutes into the root through diffusion, by diffusion. And third is ion exchange. Now there is exchange of ions between the clay particles or soil particles and the root. Now this is passive absorption. Now in passive absorption, the most important part is there is no energy involved. Now coming to active absorption. Active absorption involves metabolic energy. Now and there is involvement of protein carriers. Now these are the protein carriers. In the beginning we have discussed in our class, in one of the classes, about this carrier, these carriers. Now this plus and minus are cations and anions. Now there are two carriers here. This is the plasma membrane and these are the carriers. Now one of the carrier holds the cation and the other carrier holds the anion. So there are specific carriers for cations and specific carriers for anions. After the attachment of the ions to the carrier, there is a conformational change in the carrier. It moves to the inner surface of the plasma membrane and releases the cations and anions by conformational change in its structure. Active absorption of ions. Now where the ions get attached to the carriers? To the protein side chains. Now a complex is formed, the ion carrier complex moves to the other inner side, there is a conformational change, ion is released, metabolic energy is involved. In passive absorption, no metabolic energy is involved, whereas in active absorption there is involvement of metabolic energy. Now same carrier concept explained again. This is carrier protein. Here it is blank in the plasma membrane. This is carrier protein complex, and now you have a conformational change in the carrier protein. So the carriers are parts of the active parts are here. From this position they change to this position, then the ions are released. Now, what are the factors affecting absorption? Temperature. The movement is more with increase in temperature. So, temperature increases ion transport. Oxygen supply. Now, oxygen increases respiration, and we have seen that active absorption requires energy. So, increase in oxygen, increase in respiration, so more energy. Light increases transpiration, so there is more salt absorption if there is more transpiration, because we also say that movement of ions is occurring in a mass flow along with transpiration pull. Now, presence of other ions. Now, inside the soil, if many ions are present, what is observed is some ions interfere with the other ions in the absorption. That is interference of ions. Now, translocation of minerals. Now, what is, now we have discussed already, that is absorption of minerals. Now, we are coming to translocation of minerals. What is translocation of minerals? Now, in the beginning earlier classes, we have discussed about apoplast and symplast. Apoplast is the free space, that is cell walls, intercellular spaces through which things can move very easily. Symplast is the protoplasm. I will show you the diagram once again. This is symplast. This is symplast. Through plasma, protoplast, it is moving. Now, this is apoplast. Through the cell wall and intercellular spaces, the water is moving. Symplast and apoplast. Now, translocation, that is movement of ions once absorbed by root to different parts of the plant, takes place through the apoplast or symplast. Now, apoplast is cell walls, intercellular spaces up to the endodermis, and we have already discussed that there are Casparian strips in the endodermis. So, there is transport through the passage cell. Now, once it reaches the xylem, they enter in, move to different parts along with water movement. Now, this entry of minerals into xylem is called xylem loading. Now, we have discussed about translocation of minerals. Now, we will discuss about translocation of organic solutes, that is food materials. Food materials inside the plant are produced by photosynthesis. Now, because they are photosynthesis, they are called photosynthates. Now, photosynthates are also called assimilates. Now, the movement of organic solutes is either downward, that is from leaves to stems and roots, upward from growing parts to different places, and lateral from leaves to lateral parts. Now, so there is always a source from which the movement takes place, and there is a sink where it is reached. Now, the most acceptable theory of movement of organic solutes was given by Munch. Now, as we have seen in the previous case, now the movement of solutes takes place, movement of water takes place through xylem, and the evidence for this was ringing experiment. Similarly, the movement of organic solutes takes place through phloem. Now, ringing experiments. The external part is removed along with phloem, but xylem is present. This red one is xylem. Bark is removed, that means external part along with phloem. Now, photosynthate or food is synthesized in the leaf. Now, here you see there is no swelling, but here there is swelling because the food that is coming down is accumulated here. This shows that it is the phloem through which translocation takes place. Now, other evidence is isotope. Now, if you use carbon isotope in photosynthesis, you will find that the carbon isotope is found in the phloem and not in the xylem. This also, that is not mentioned here, this also shows that the movement takes place through phloem. Now, coming to Munch's hypothesis, which is mostly accepted till date. Now, you see, mass flow. What is this mass flow? Let us examine from this diagram. Here there is a vessel, here there is another vessel. Both the vessels are connected by a tube. Now, these vessels have a semi-permeable membrane, both of them. Now, this vessel, if osmotic concentration of this vessel is increased, sugars are increased, there is entry of water into this vessel due to end osmosis. Water enters. Now, water moves along the tube by mass flow, and along with water the sugar solution, sugar also moves out, and here it reaches. Now, because water reaches here, then water, the concentration here decreases if you remove this sugar that is reaching here. Now, so the concentration is less here and the concentration is more here. So, water moves out and there is circulation like this. These two are connected. Now, you see, this is mass flow. I am explaining it once again. I will explain it one more time through another diagram. This is a vessel in which sugar concentration is increasing. Now, this is water. When the sugar concentration increases by end osmosis, water enters in, because this is a semi-permeable membrane, and the turgidity of this increases. So, because this is rigid, it is not only semi-permeable, but it is rigid, that means hard. So, water moves along this line and reaches here, and along with water the sugars also move. Now, that is mass flow, and the sugars, once they reach here, if you remove them, then the concentration of this remains low and water moves out of this and again goes to this place. This movement continues. Now, imagine that this is leaf and sugar is produced from photosynthesis. Now, this enters into the phloem. That is called, entry of this into phloem is called phloem loading, and once the phloem, it reaches the place where it has to reach through the phloem, it is used by the target. Suppose the food is produced in the leaf, that is here, and it moves to the root. In root it is used. So, water enters into the root, again it comes like this to this place. This is the xylem, this is the phloem. So, the movement takes place.